in admin. Oh. And then moving on to public safety, we have this contract split with Ivans. We pay 44% to Santa Clara and Ivans pays 56%. That's on court expenses, our police department, and on fire. Fire is up mostly due to staffing needs. And then moving on to public works. Sorry, is there any questions?
Oh, this is all stuff that we've seen and reviewed before, so keep going.
Okay. Public works, we have engineering built in there for Vineyard Drive design, and then public transportation is also built in there. Parks is down because we moved the BMX improvements, the park, the Canyon View parking lot, we moved that to the capital projects, down to capital projects, and I'll explain that in a few. But in parks, we have a walking mower. We're purchasing the leased backhoe and a field groomer, all budgeted in there under the capital equipment line. And then economic development, it's up solely because of the puzzles, the Santa Clara puzzles we purchased. And we've also in turn have built the revenue up in miscellaneous revenue. That's all I have as far as for the general fund. Again, it's a small increase over last year. Is there any questions before I move on to enterprise funds?
Questions, council? Keep going, Deb.
Okay, special revenue fund, we have the ARPA funds that we received 2 different payments equating to 990. I don't have it right in front of me, sorry. But we still have about 250,000 to use towards expenditures on that. Yeah, we received 996 from the federal government on that for revenue loss program. And so we've got different projects we're using that on. Under the impact fees, we were estimating 55 building permits. We also have the trees for the orchard on the expense size built in there. Traffic signal on Red Mountain and Pioneers in there. The engineering fees for splash pad and the pickleball court are added in there. Those are the main things that we don't have budgeted every year. Moving on to capital projects. We have revenue that we moved over from the restricted RAT tax funds. So we move that, and then with the 2 prior years of transferring funds from the our over under, if we have to stay in compliance with the Gatsby general fund bounce, we were able to move some money in there to use it toward the expenses coming up, which we will be using on the BMX park and on the Vineyard Drive improvements. Moving to water, it's up solely mostly due to the capital improvements, which is Solus, Black Desert upsize, PRV upsize. We've got the Eaton customer app in there for customers to be able to look at their bills. And then the Crestview irrigation line. And the majority of all that is impact fee eligible. Moving on to the sewer fund. We have cameras for the sewer mains built in for 30,000. 42,000 is built in for the upsize of Silverado and Solus. Power, unfortunately, I wish we all had a crystal ball to figure that one out, but there's some money built in improvements, but the buying the power is the driving force of the large increase there. And then stormwater, again, we just have money budgeted for the Vineyard Drive improvements. That's a big one throughout the different funds. And that is all I have prepared to review, unless that was really quick. Again, I think we've covered it thoroughly before other meetings. But do you have any questions for me?
Council, any questions for Deb before we open the public hearing? Okay, thank you, Deb.
You're welcome. Brock, do you have anything? Sorry, I just talked.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing to receive public input regarding the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. Ask anyone who has come to address the budget or questions on the budget. Give you the opportunity to come to the mic. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Go ahead and go to the consent agenda. Council, you have the claims and minutes in your packet, the minutes from the May 17th and May 24th City Council meetings, and the claims through June 21st. Mute her. And the calendar of events. Next week, we will have another City Council meeting. July 4th is the holiday. City office will be closed. The first City Council meeting in July will be on the 12th. Work meeting on the 19th. We're closed on Pioneer Day, and the second City Council meeting will be on July 26th. So is there any question on anything on the consent agenda, Council? If there's no question, I would look for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make that motion. Can you hear? You guys hear me all right?
I could. Josh, can you hear Ben when he talks? Yes.
All right, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Ben and a second by Jarrett to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any question on that motion, Council? All in favor? Roll call because it's a money item. Ben?
Aye.
Krista?
Aye.
Danny?
Aye.
Jarrett?
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0, Council. Thank you. We go on to item B1 under general business. Consider approval of the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and ordinance 2023-12. Debbie has made the presentation, Council. We've held the public hearing. Is there any additional discussion or questions regarding the budget? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
I move that we approve the FY 2023-2024 budget and ordinance 2023-12.
I second that.
Got a motion by Denny and a second by Krista to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and ordinance 2023-12. Any question on that motion, Council? Money item again. All in favor? Jarrett?
Aye.
Denny?
Aye.
Krista?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
The ayes have it 4-0. Thank you, Council. Item B2, discussion regarding the proposed amendment to the Black Desert Development Agreement. Matt?
Yeah. Tell me if you have any trouble hearing me.
Can you hear him, Josh? No.
Okay. So I'll try to speak up. I wanted to just briefly introduce this, Council. This item is on the agenda mostly for your information, and so we can have an opportunity to discuss what's being proposed with this development agreement amendment. The next item on your agenda is actually a preliminary plat for the first plat in the Black Desert project. So we thought it'd be appropriate to have this on the agenda as well, so that to lead into it, just to make sure you're up to speed on what the discussions have been and so on. But the actual approval of the amended development agreement will come to you later. So this is not an action item as far as the development agreement goes. But again, it's because of the relationship with the preliminary plat that's proposed, we thought it'd be appropriate to have it on the agenda tonight. So just to kind of give you a brief summary of what our objectives have been in proposing this amendment to the Black Desert Development Agreement. I'll take a couple of minutes, and then I know Black Desert's counsel is here as well, that I've been working with on this. And he may want to share some things with you as well. By and large, what this is about is really primarily simplifying the development agreement. There have been some things that since the original development agreement was signed a number of years ago, I think it's been 3 years ago now, probably. There have been some changes to the project. One of those, for example, is there was originally contemplated to be a permanent golf course maintenance shed or building on the Santa Clara side of the project. As you know, since that time, the applicant has now elected to build, instead of that permanent structure, a temporary maintenance facility, which we have actually entered a separate agreement with the developer for, that sets out all the conditions and requirements for them to construct that temporary building. But the development agreement didn't contemplate that. And so there were a number of requirements in the development agreement that were actually tied to the approval and the construction of the permanent golf course maintenance facility, which when that went away, it just didn't make any sense anymore. And then as we went back, as we have understood more, the developer's intent with the project, as their plans have become more firm, we've just gone back to the development agreement and recognized that there are just some things that could be written better to make them clearer, more consistent with what the intent of the project is. So that's really the overall objective here. Let me just, if it's helpful, let me just run through briefly what I would consider the major changes. The first item is that the development originally contemplated a different method of dividing the project into sub areas or planning areas. I won't go into a lot of detail about what that was, but what we're modifying that to do is basically to require that if the developer wants to sell a certain portion of the project to another developer, for example, you remember the Regal Homes project that was previously approved. Regal Homes is now no longer part of the project, but at the time they were going to develop a portion of the Black Desert project. And so that property was going to be sold to them for that purpose. The development agreement now contemplates that whenever that happens, if it does happen, that the developer will have to come in and essentially subdivide that property off from the larger project, either the developer or the person, buying the property. So trying to bring that into line with our ordinances and with state law. We also incorporated the temporary maintenance facility agreement. So it's actually now an exhibit to the amendment, or it's proposed to be, just so that we incorporate all of the requirements and conditions related to the temporary maintenance facility. We've done some clarification on what trails the developer is required to dedicate to the city. And essentially, in a nutshell, it's the trails that are meant to satisfy the requirements of the city's Parks and Trails Master Plan. So we provided some additional clarification there. And then probably the biggest one is on road circulation and traffic impacts. This is a section that was significantly tied into the development or the anticipated development of that permanent maintenance facility. With that maintenance facility going away, it really just didn't make sense to have that connection there anymore. And so we've fallen back on really a very typical traditional set of requirements that just simply requires that the developer put in the infrastructure that's required as they develop the phases of their project, if that makes sense. So it's not it's not really unique in any way. For example, if they get a plat approved for the South Village, which is on the agenda tonight for your consideration, they would just simply be required to put in all of the required improvements on-site and off-site for that subdivision, as would normally be required under our subdivision ordinances. So again, really going away from this being a unique approach to bringing it more into line with what our standard requirements would be, largely because some of the features of the development have changed. I think that's it. I mean, we could go into more detail on any of those things. Oh, I should probably mention as well, we asked Black Desert to provide us an updated, essentially concept drawing or map for the project. You may remember that when the development agreement was originally approved, the only thing that really had been designed at that point was the golf course. And so we had attached to the development agreement at that time, essentially a rough layout of the golf course. The city had at the time only approved the golf course use. It had not approved any specific plans for any individual development phases of the project. And so we asked them if they could provide us something that was a little more evolved than that, now that we're further down the road, and they have. You may see that was in your packet. It's a map that was, I think, colored mainly in red, showed the various uses that they have anticipated for the project. That may change. Again, it's really just in front of you for purposes of discussion to give, help you anticipate what's coming down the road. It may also be affected by what you decide tonight on the proposed preliminary plat as well. I will note, just because it's been an item of interest for the council, on the Area 6 area that we're anticipating the lava being preserved, it is indicated on the map that's proposed to be attached as having some development density there. That's not inconsistent with what has always been anticipated in our conversations with the developer, that at some point that they would set aside a conservation easement to preserve that property. And in doing so, there's a certain value that they receive in the form of a tax benefit. And having that indicated as potentially developable, which it is a benefit to them in that way. So I don't want that to throw anyone for a loop. That's not an error, and we still anticipate that property will eventually be set aside permanently in the form of a conservation easement. Again, the actual boundaries of that area may be impacted by your decisions tonight, but just wanted to call that out so there was no confusion about that. So that's about all I have, Mayor. I don't know if Damon wants to add something.
Well, my name is Damon Georgelis. I'm here on behalf of the developer, Black Desert, and Patrick certainly sends his regards and apologizes for not being able to be here. We do let him out of the county about every 2 years, and this happened to be that time. I just wanted to follow up on that Area 6. It's always our intent that we'd be either by some form of gift, be it a conservation easement or an outright gift to the city, that would eventually go there, that along with that would go some of our density. And then we thought it pertinent to show the type of density we assumed would be going with it when we made that gift. Also, if you'll see, to the extent there is any change, I'm not sure there's a large change in the outline, and I'm maybe getting a little ahead on the agenda, but when you look at the current development plan and you see Area 6, to the extent there's any change to contemplate South Village, what you will actually also see is that we've made upward in South Village, and that a portion, 2 of the lots that were originally on that plat will now be HOA controlled open space to maintain the view corridors that it was expressed were very important. So I just wanted to cover those 2, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Any council, any questions for the developer on this? Always at the podium. And we can come back to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Matt regarding what's been explained regarding the development agreement? And this will come back to us formally for
Yeah.
approval, right?
Yeah, this is really just to give you an update. The only other thing I would say about it is very comfortable with the direction that this is going. Obviously, the council has some decisions to make as to the specific application that's before you tonight on South Village. And whatever decisions you make there will make sure are accounted for in the amendment as needed as well. But honestly, I don't think it'll affect it much. So if I can give you any assurance that what's being proposed is, pretty uncontroversial. We're really just cleaning it up, trying to simplify it, make it clearer so that we're in a better position going forward.
Council, any questions for Matt? Thank you, Matt. Item number 3 is the discussion and action to consider a proposed PDR zone amendment and preliminary plat for the proposed South Village at Black Desert subdivision. Subject property is part of the Black Desert Plan community, which includes 19 hole golf course or an 18 hole.
A 19
A
hole
19
golf.
course.
Yeah, I didn't.
You're going to be unique. Patrick Manning's the applicant. Jim McNulty's doing the presentation. Jim.
Thanks, Mayor. Brock's brought up the staff report for you. Let's go ahead and go to the subdivision plat. I believe it's right after this. Got a few pages there. Yeah, let's start there. This is the preliminary subdivision plat. They're proposing a total of 40 single-family lots on just under 44 acres of property. So this is very low density residential, actually 0.91 units per acre. The lots range in size from the smallest at ½ an acre to the largest at 1.67 acres. The subject property is in Area 5 of the Black Desert community. The overall Black Desert Plan community includes approximately 570 acres. 290 acres are within and part of the development agreement and are within Santa Clara City, with the remainder being in Ivins City. Area A is adjacent to Area 5 and includes a portion of the golf course built around the proposed project. So that's hard to see here. I think we have a project plan further down. The original project plan should be in here. We go to that briefly and then I'll come back. Yeah, that's the new project plan, but we can go from that. This is the proposed project plan. You can see the Area A is the golf course area. And then Area 5 is the area where the subdivision is being proposed. And then Area 6 is an area that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Matt and their legal counsel were talking about the proposed Area 6. But you can see where the golf course is in place and it's built and it's done. So with a portion of the golf course being built in Area 5, in return, some of the lots are being shown in Area A. And so it's kind of been flipped. And so we have the project plan and the preliminary plat. Now, Chapter 1768 of the Plan Development Zone does require preliminary subdivision plat review along with the PDR zone amendment application, which is what is here before you this evening. And so if we could go back to the preliminary plat, and I want to go through that and then we'll come back to the two different plans, the existing project plan and kind of what we're looking at, the proposed project plan. So we've gone through a number of items. Item number 1 is public streets and dedication. So if we go to the previous page that shows the road coming from Pioneer Parkway, this is it right here. So public streets and dedications. So these are public streets. They have to meet city standards. The public streets required for the subdivision include a 66-foot cross section for Red Mountain Drive, which you see right before you coming off of running north to south, coming off of Pioneer Parkway. And then Road E. Road E is the connector off of the extension of Red Mountain Drive, which will provide access to the Black Desert area. And then you can see Road E connecting to a new Road C. And so if we go to the next page, the matched line, my left, the upper left-hand corner, you can see where the match line connects and then extends forward to provide access into the subdivision itself. And so for local streets, our cross-section, which we recently adopted as a 50-foot cross-section, that was our original recommendation. However, when it went to Planning Commission recognized that the project is in a PDR, which we recognize as well. You may recall that we recently changed our road cross-section standards and updated our construction standards. That being the case, a PDR allows for a minimum street width of 45 feet rather than 50 feet. So in this case, you would still get the 30-foot of asphalt, the high back curb and gutter, and a 5-foot park sidewalk on each side at a 45-foot right of way rather than the 50-foot right of way. So in talking to the developer, after that motion was made by the Planning Commission, Logan Blake was part of that. He is a licensed PE on our Planning Commission, and he was part of our committee that put the new standards in place. He brought up some of the dialogue there. The thought would be that this road C would continue as a 50-foot cross-section until it gets to that bridge area that's been circled right here. And then from the bridge area, as it extends inward towards the project, it would transition to that 45-foot right of way that's allowed for a PDR for access in there. They believe that it would minimize disturbance to lava cuts, things of that nature by 5 foot being the right of way. So Planning Commission has recommended that the council consider that for a portion of the right of way in the interior of the project being allowed at 45 feet rather than 50. City staff, including the Public Works Director, has had an opportunity to discuss this, and we're comfortable with that transition from 50 to 45 at that location, just serving the interior of the project. The next item, building setbacks and height, they have to comply with the standard PD setbacks. However, they're proposing a restriction on the plat to limiting height to any of the homes at 28 feet. So that's significant because generally the PD zone allows a building height of 35 feet. Their idea is it would be more of an entrada style development, keeping that roof height down. So that's something that they would put on the plat and in their CCNRs. The next item is a flag lot and double fronted lots. So if we scroll down just a little bit, up, I meant up. And then you can see lot 7 here off of the cul-de-sac. That is a flag lot. They're proposing one flag lot that requires not conditional, but that requires Planning Commission approval. Planning Commission reviewed that on May 25th and felt that the one flag lot was an efficient use of land, and they were willing to let that proceed as a flag lot in the subdivision, being that it's just one lot out of 40. The other item that came up is double fronted lots. So if you look at lots 21, 22, and 23, and they are located between Road B and Road A, they front on Road B and kind of back onto Road A or double front. That being the case, there are different options in our development code for double fronted lots. In this case, the developer has chosen that these lots will have a 25-foot rear yard setback rather than a typical 10-foot rear yard setback. That way they're not required to do a 6-foot wall and cut more into that lava and into that area that could remain undisturbed. So they're choosing to create or allow for additional setback rather than putting a wall in place or doing park strip type of treatment. And the ordinance allows that, and we're comfortable with that. A 25-foot rear yard is a nice setback rather than the typical 10-foot setback. Next item, preservation of lava and minimal disturbance. Kent Byland is here this evening. He's a representative of Patrick Manning and the group. We've been told that he will be involved with the placement of individual homes on the site. They're looking to limit disturbance and allow preservation of lava areas where they can. Case by case with each lot as it goes through a review and building permit process. The golf course, a portion of the golf course is included in the preliminary subdivision plat, as you can see. It's the areas that go around either side of the development area as per that project plan. So The applicant has either opened the golf course or they're intending to open it soon. I believe it is open. I myself am not a golfer, but I've seen a lot of commercials and a lot of information about it. And the exciting announcement about the LPGA stuff coming in 2025. So they did introduce or put a note on the plan. A golf course fly zone note has been added to the plat, and that will be included in the CCNRs, making sure that buyer beware, future residents are aware that golf courses could, a golf ball could impact them on occasion. We do have a multi-purpose trail that's required. If we go back to the first sheet, providing the access from Red Mountain Drive. So we do in this location have a trail through Tuacahn Wash. That trail would continue. The 10-foot trail would continue under the wash and run along the east side of Red Mountain Drive and then cross Road E and run north and east of Road E to other areas of the development that you don't see on the map, but north and east. So they have committed to following our trails master plan and putting in that 10-foot multi-purpose trail as required. The next item is open space areas. If we go back to the plat, the preliminary plat does include 2 open space areas to be maintained by the HOA. You'll see open space area number 1. And if I blow that up a little bit, it's located on the road, on the bend, on the main road. And you can see it across the street from lot 30, kind of on right below where it says Entrada. So you've got that open space area there on the other side of the road running east adjacent to Entrada. You've got an area there that's about 25 to 30 foot wide, providing a buffer between those residents and the location of the future access road. And then we also have down below an open space area number 2, which they've shown between lot 37 and 38. The council will recall on a site visit that was conducted, this was talked about. There were some concerns with a lot in that area and the location of power lines. And so the applicant has come back with removal of a lot in that area. The impact has been lot 37, the proposed 37 is increased in size. You have the open space there and then lot 38. And so those 2 open space areas would be owned and maintained by the HOA. The proposed area 6 revisions. So if we go to the proposed project plan, the one that we were looking at earlier, that one right here. So just looking at that, this area includes originally, the original plan showed a conservation easement of 18.85 acres. And that included the area that you see as area 6. And then can you scroll down to the next sheet on this plan? And you can see where area 6 is here. So you have that area plus the area that runs north and east adjacent to where that subdivision road is kind of dead ending and providing access into Entrada or lining up with Entrada for fire and emergency vehicle access. So you can see that area there is proposed to be removed, allowing for a few lots to go in as well as the roadway that's required, allowing for fire and emergency vehicle access turnaround, and then connection to water and sewer via the Point project, the assisted living facility there next door. So the change is 18.85 acres to approximately 13.3. So you're looking at a reduction of about 5 acres. The proposed lots 37, 38, and 39, and 40, along with open space area 2, and the public road that lines up with Entrada and St. George, which is a private street. They're located within the northwest corner of area 6. So a decision on this item, which includes an amendment to the development agreement, can be decided on by the city council prior to or concurrently with final plat approval. And then I talk about, we did have a site visit. The applicant or property developer invited staff and members of the council to come out and walk the site and discuss it on April 19th of 2023. And so the council's aware of these revisions. If we go back to the subdivision plat, and I'm almost done here. Thank you for being patient with me. The next item is building and fire code emergency access. And so a second point of ingress and egress via a public street system has not been provided into the proposed subdivision. As a result, the applicant is required to fire sprinkle all residential structures within the project. The IRC, which is the International Residential Code, requires an NFPA 113D sprinkler system. However, emergency access will be available from the southwest edge of the project adjacent to Entrada, which is a private development with gates. So you see the end of the main road here in that southwest, southeast region with the turnaround. And then you see the location of that access into Entrada. It is a private street. So our system is a public street, would be a public street. This is a private street. Private streets, public streets don't generally connect up with private streets. And the other thing is our street system is in one city, Santa Clara City. The private street system is located in St. George City, and this is a private gated community. So the access is limited, but it would be there for fire and emergency vehicle access and so forth. So this would be available for St. George residents if they, in the event of emergency, and then their access or would be available to Santa Clara residents in the event of an emergency. We talk about the landscaping ordinance. If they propose entry features or landscaping, as you know, you have to meet city ordinance, our water efficient and conservation ordinance, which was adopted in 2022. A lot's been talked about through the Washington County Water Conservancy District on the news about this. And we're one of the communities that does comply with that. The culinary water availability, again, the applicant is required to obtain a will serve letter or other verified documentation from the Conservancy District prior to moving forward with final plat or recordation. Again, it's a preliminary tonight. Secondary water availability, the applicant is required to connect or install secondary water for all outdoor water use. And then project CCNRs, in this case, a copy of the CCNRs is required by Chapter 1768. The applicant would need to provide a copy of those for city review, recommendations and approval at final plat submittal. And then dust control is an item that we talk about with our projects. As we know that south wind can kick up. We've had that recently. I think last week there was a big dust storm. I noticed that, but we require that they submit a dust control plan prior to final plat recordation. Precautionary measures are needed to protect our general health, safety, and welfare of residents in the vicinity. Now, this is a public meeting tonight. The public hearing was held on May 25th of 2023 by the Planning Commission. And so this item has been posted in public locations as well as our website via the agenda. It does not require a public hearing notice like what was required prior to the Planning Commission meeting, which has already been done. The item is compliant with our general plan, which is medium density residential for this property. And the proposed application meets the intent of the general plan. It's very low density. It's even below medium density residential in this case. But as you know, there'll be future phases in the Black Desert project that will be higher density, more in the 8 to 10 units per acre if they get into multifamily. But this is very low density at less than 1 unit per acre, single family. So it does comply with the general plan. We meet state code considerations for a zoning amendment for noticing, which we've done prior to the Planning Commission meeting, and then having a public meeting tonight to consider the zone amendment as well as a preliminary subdivision plat. As a result, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 25th, 2023. A motion was made to recommend approval to the City Council and passed on a vote of 4-0. City staff recommends the City Council consider the PDR zone amendment and preliminary plat for the South Village at Black Desert subdivision, subject to the following conditions. Now we have 15 conditions, so there's a good number of conditions. Condition number 2 is the change I talked about at the beginning about the roadway. You see it's been highlighted where it says that a 50-foot public right-of-way be required from Road E and along Road C until east of the golf cart tunnel, at which time it may transition to a 45-foot public right-of-way that serves the subdivision. So that's that change. If you are comfortable with the Planning Commission recommendation on that item. And then the other item of interest is item 9, It states that a decision by the city council, which includes an amendment to the development agreement regarding Area 6 be decided on prior to or concurrently with final plat approval, which is what we talked about a little bit earlier with legal counsel. Mayor, that's what I have at this time. I'll turn the time back over to you.
Anybody, any questions for Jim?
So,
Jim, I'm sure that it's already been addressed, but that flag lot, the
Mhm.
entrance into that flag lot is how wide?
It is 25 feet to meet city code requirements.
Thought I saw on the map that it was.
Yeah, and it's the biggest lot in the subdivision. So it's that staff portion is at 25 feet. And then there's ample area to place a home on there as well.
Ben?
yeah, just on the, so explain the fire sprinkler. They're required because we're going into private roads.
Because we have a dead end system. That access is only for emergency access as needed if there was an event. And so the fire sprinkler are required. We have our fire chief here and our building official that can probably answer that better than myself, but we've had multiple discussions as to why it's required because it is a dead end system.
But the dead end, again, I only ask because if there's something that's gonna destroy your house, it's gonna be
Yeah.
the fire sprinkler system. But you've got a dead end street that's there for emergency access.
Mhm.
A fire would be considered emergency access. I gotta believe there's even in a private subdivision on private streets, a fire would, I guess I'm just thinking for residents in the future, just I've cleaned up a lot of homes that have fire sprinklers that some kid breaks a sprinkler and before you can shut it off, so that's all I'm asking, chief, is it under the everything there with, even though it is a dead, private road, is it required under that?
Yeah, I think when that was, I think I'm on, when we looked at that, Colin was in that TRC, but I think basically based on the code is the determination once they have, I think it was density, right, Cody? Yeah, and you need the two, but if you can't provide the two, obviously, then that's when it trips over to the sprinkler system.
And
So-
rather than tying back into Pioneer Parkway and creating a lot of disturbance through the lava, which has never been the intent. You know, we wanted to get the conservation of as much lava as possible. It's a dead end system.
So is this specific to the water line or the roads?
I can't speak on the infrastructure, but it's just that the fire code requires two access points. And so I think the original, Jim could speak on that, but the original plan I saw was on Pioneer Parkway, I think, way back in the preliminary to get access, to that main boulevard was originally there, but that got, they moved away from that. And we have what we have now to that private road, street, but it's a gate system. So
Because the development, the Santa Clara piece, the assisted living, I was under the impression they were bringing a water line
The water
all the
line
way
loops.
through. So I thought we had the loop.
Yes.
Yeah, the water line the loop is there.
Yeah, so maybe I can clarify on this. So this plan has obviously gone through a number of different revisions and a lot of those changes involved this secondary access. My understanding is the way that it's configured as the proposal before you shows that it does satisfy the fire code for secondary access. Chief, you can correct me if I say something wrong here, but I believe that under those conditions, the sprinklers would not strictly be required. But that condition was originally required because there was some question about that second access. And so that has continued as a recommendation. But as far as the fire code is concerned, my understanding is that where that second access is provided, the access has to meet fire code in terms of, the ability of emergency vehicles to pass through. Whether that's a crash gate or what, I'd have to look at the specific requirements. But my understanding is the developer has agreed to meet fire code with that access, and so that may satisfy that requirement.
The access on the St. George side doesn't exist yet either. So it's planned access. Black Desert has an easement to get to that access, but it doesn't exist. It's not constructed yet.
Yeah, it's part, I think it's, the reason I ask again is just, you're gonna have two accesses at some point. I just worry we put something on the plat that requires some, because we do have a loop. I know we have a loop. If the crash gate suffices the secondary access, you're just requiring, again, I'm not privy to
Yeah,
the entire fire code, but it seems like
And I didn't
even
sit
on a
on,
private street, you would have jurisdiction to cross that in.
yeah, you
case
could,
of
we can
emergency.
actually, we can get through it. It's just, I believe that's gated. Is that correct? That,
It's
That
our,
private-
the community is a gated community. Can you hear me? Is this on?
Yeah.
I can't tell. I speak loud enough. It's a gated community. We have a public street system. They have a private street system. It's not the best situation. So it's fire and emergency vehicle access only. The other thing is the applicant will be required to provide a key or an Opticon override system controls to the fire department. That is much preferred over crash gates. That condition has remained because Confould, our city fire marshal, who reports to Chief Parker, has asked that it remain to meet fire code requirements. So I have it in here. So that's why it's in.
Ty, did you have something to add, Ty? Did you want to say something? I need you to come up if you do.
Come to the
Can't talk till you
microphone.
get there, bro.
Microphone.
You got all dressed up too. You're looking good.
My name's Terrell Hansen. No, so I'm not on behalf of the fire department, but you need egress and like ingress and egress. It's just like what we did with across the river to build more lots over there. It's the same situation with this. So you need 2 points.
Yeah, and I understand that. My question is with the crash, it sounds like, and I guess I'm confused on it. First, it sounded like it was water loop and it's not the loop, because I know we have the loop,
It's not the water.
but,
No, it's
It
how
can-
we can access.
well, you're coming in off phase 5 of Chaco South. It has a gate
Okay,
there.
so there's a gate, so then that makes time, right?
Well, my question is specific, we can argue
I know.
my
I
question
understand.
is, under the fire code, does that suffice? Because it's getting presented as though you can't cross a public to private road, but you got.
yeah,
to come
I
in and
don't, think that's not at least from the fire department's perspective. You have to have 2 access points. And so,
Which I think we will, but one.
And that
goes
would
from
be
a
the-
Private road to a
yeah.
public road. I'm
and
not,
there's not an issue of going from private to public. We can do that. But what depends on what we put in place, it's just, that's the issue. And so like on, right, there's gonna be multiple things that we have to go through. And I'll tell you right now, I've never been on through a locked padlock gate in an apartment complex. We always drive the longer distance to get there. That's the discussion is they're gonna enter off of our Santa Clara site entrance. So they're not gonna drive through that private development. So that would be the discussion. Is it truly do you have 2 points of access? That's, I guess, would be,
the
from the
question is
TRC discussion,
specific
so.
to, does it, because you're saying, like I said,
Yeah.
if it meets the code in the language, then you're, because right now you're saying we're gonna require a $20,000 to $25,000 sprinkler system on
Yeah.
every home. That's what it's gonna cost. And 99.9% of the time, if there's gonna be an issue with the sprinkler system, it's gonna flood your home.
I agree with that too, in my
So-
experience.
So all I'm saying is if it in fact did meet the code, regardless of whether it's convenient or inconvenient, because you're right, you're not gonna come through the gate of
Right.
Entrada. You're not gonna drive down all those windy streets to get to that. You're gonna come in the open gate side every
Right.
time. But if it still meets the criteria, meaning you're driving in, somebody drives into the lava, blocks the road, you have to have that second access.
Yeah,
You've got it, but you're not gonna use it unless you absolutely have
Have
to.
to.
But if that.
well, I think
that-
even, yeah, because Chief Folds responsible, he's fire marshal and he's certified and he's going to these TRCs and analyzing the code and applying all these things. And so his statement here is basically, it lies upon what that private access is gonna be. What's the functionality of it? So yeah, does it meet the code? That's a question is, does it based on the multiple points of entry that are privately, if we can get the Opticom systems on every gate, then yeah, you can get through those but we got to put Opticoms on the fire engines, which is a flashing light. There's multiple steps to actually make that an accessible point of egress or entrance for emergency services. So that's the discussion. I think that was Chief
So-
Fold's point in those TRCs. So
Is it an either condition where either you've got the gate controls on the St. George gate and the gate entering Santa
So
Clara?
it's a Knox box thing that we have.
But if you have the keyed entrance on both ends, do the sprinklers go away? And if you can't get the keyed one, then the sprinklers come into play. Is that the condition? Or is it a mandate for both?
I would say both, but
yeah, I think the code's clear. You have to have 2 points of access. Now, how that's,
Does the code require sprinklers with 2 points of access?
no,
So, yeah, so Mayor,
that's always like.
what
means
I
of
can,
egress.
what I can tell you is what my understanding was from our fire marshal the last time we had a conversation about this, and it's possible that I'm remembering it wrong. But my understanding of what he said was that he was comfortable with the 2 accesses as proposed. And that the code does not strictly require the sprinklers where those 2 accesses are provided. So what I would suggest is, he's not here to speak for himself. So I would say that whatever his, whatever requirement is that he, communicates to us is the requirement we'll obviously need to follow, and the developer will need to follow. But that's my understanding of the requirement. So.
And is the applicant okay with sprinklers? Thanks, Ty.
So Sean Skanky with Black Desert Development. I mean, if they are required, we're happy to put them in, but I mean, if it is a ability to count this as 2 accesses, we'd probably prefer not to, because it is an extra expense and a maintenance issue for the homeowners in the future.
Yeah.
So maybe
So-
I'd recommend on this particular item, we say something along the lines of working with, Chief Khan to understand the requirements. of this.
Satisfy his requirements.
Yeah, I mean, this is preliminary plat, so I'm.
Can I add one thing,
fairly
Mayor,
comfortable that we
on
can go
that?
back to him and.
Excuse me?
may I add one thing on that discussion point? Because obviously Chief Khan will report and talk about the things that are going on in TRC. So I think on this, I know there was discussions with the developer on some type of agreement with that. Because he basically reported, hey, I would defer to the minutes, but I think there's conversation there that this didn't show up arbitrarily. There was discussion on it. So if we could look at the minutes, and he's obviously not here to, and I wasn't sitting in that meeting, but
I think we
so-
can probably, move forward with it just based on satisfying the requirements of the fire marshal, the fire code,
yeah,
with the development. So the obligation may be to make sure the gates and the knocks, whatever system we're going to use to open it, are in place and, fully functional before it opens. Otherwise, you may end up installing some sprinkler systems to meet the requirements of the code. If that road from Entrada can't get built on a time frame that this is being built on, you may have to sprinkler until it can. 'cause you
yeah. And
don't have-
that's why I would defer to that minutes. I think it's valuable to just kind of get the facts of what was discussed, because
Well, and I think that's probably why it's in the way it is, because phase 5, which is where this connecting road is under construction right now. And so it hasn't been platted, it hasn't been recorded. And so obviously right now, my question wasn't to go against fire. My question is to say, if we meet the minimum requirement, I would 100 times as a homeowner not take this fire sprinklers, because I'm telling you right now, they're problematic on residential with kids and everything else. And yeah, the cost is one thing, but it's, as long as we meet, you meet the requirement there. And I was just trying to understand the water loop and the gates and the private roads. But that's, like I said, it doesn't affect the developer because it just becomes a cost to the homeowner, but
Yeah, and Patrick Manning's not here this evening. He had another commitment. So Sean and Mr. Byland and Jared Bates are here this evening representing him. But this was something that was discussed right out the get-go many times. And what was portrayed to us is these are resort homes. These are second homes. A lot of these are owned by corporations and companies. We want to build, it's a high-end project similar to Entrada. Costs and things of that nature are not a concern to us. So if that's required by the fire code, so be it. But, we can talk to Con again and bring it back at final. These are the notes that have been incorporated from Con into the staff report. So I'm not going to second guess our fire marshal. But I think it's something that we can discuss further when we bring it back at final.
Yeah, and I guess my only point is, I think Jim's right. I mean, it is what it is. I just don't know. I just don't think it's a controversy because, Con's going to help us understand what the requirement is, and the developers said that they're going to comply with it. So.
And I'm okay with that, but if it's satisfying with 2 accesses or a water loop,
Sure.
I just don't want to get into the weeds. Oh, if we have everything there, if everything's there.
Yeah.
That satisfies the code, and then I just.
Well, and the other.
And I don't have
Right.
we don't have anything over in this. We have phase 5, which is, that's why I know the road's connecting, but I just.
And
It's
the
just
other concern, the other thing out there is we're working with them to move forward on a preliminary because the project has been going on for a while now. But we don't have approval in writing from St. George City saying that access is okay yet from them. So we need that written verification or access. We need to make sure that that's okay. What if it goes away? What if they decide they're not going to grant that access? We would hope they wouldn't do that because we would allow our access for fire and emergency vehicle to them as needed. And we would hope that they would allow the same thing, but we don't have any written agreement in place yet. The development team's working on those written agreements, but we haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with, obviously that road connecting or having that connectability there is pertinent. And I understand why, like I said, at the early discussion, that wouldn't have been brought up because phase 5 hadn't tied in. There was some question where everything was going. That's why you have that sliver of land in the because originally that's where the tie-in was. So again, it doesn't affect the developer, but it does affect property and personal property and homeowners costs and things like that. And frankly, I lived in there and we had the second access. I'd prefer not to have those.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing? I'm sorry to keep belaboring this, but just to add to what Jim said, I think Jim's referring to making arrangements with St. George City Fire Department. There are private agreements already in place for access. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, and we've reviewed those and, we're comfortable with all of that. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a misunderstanding about that.
And I think those supersede private development. I don't think Entrada's HOA would have the power to say, no, you can't have fire access, because I think those agreements require access.
Yeah, they're
So,
established easement
Yeah.
rights. So we don't have any concerns about that. It's really just, I think what Jim was referring to is just coordination with St. George City Fire Department. So.
Hey, other questions? Council?
I just wondered about the 45-foot public right-of-way. In the planning commission meeting, Jim, you mentioned that you wanted to have Dustin speak to that, and I wondered if Dustin could speak to that for my benefit.
Sure.
I'm okay with their decision to go down to the 45 feet because Patrick has assured us that the HOA is enforcing no on-street parking. So I think the 30 feet of asphalt is plenty sufficient.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? No
Well, I
other
know-
questions?
Yeah, when we went on our tour, it was told us on the tour that we might have one of the architects here in a meeting to kind of show us where houses would be situated on these lots that are pretty sensitive to the residents. Is that going to happen tonight, or is that still a future thing?
Kent or Sean?
Kim Gunn, I'll speak to the house. We don't have architects.
And maybe it wasn't an architect, it was just someone that cites
It's that
everything.
guy right there.
Yeah, it's
Matt.
probably
Sorry,
Ken.
so, no, we don't have an architect, but Mr. Byland is very familiar with how these houses will be situated. And so potentially you could have some insight on that.
Talk to him about how you cite those homes, Ken. Introduce yourself.
Kent Byland with Enlaw, the developer. But these are such big lots, big envelopes, that it's kind of hard to say this is what a house is going to look like, because you just don't know the massing and the location of the house. So you just have to assume that the location of the house based on the elevation of the lot is, I mean, some of those envelopes are almost an acre in size. And so if someone, I mean, most of those houses will probably take less than 20 to 25% of the lot as a footprint. And they usually want to have that freedom to move it where they need to within those setbacks. I want to make one other thing kind of, we're with that 28 foot, that's only on 6 lots. Everything else within our design guidelines restricted to 19 feet.
Maybe you could clarify a little bit. We were told that they would also do everything they could to keep it from sight as they're on the other side of the little lava ridge there. In other words, they've made the envelope a lot so big that, yes, they can keep the building portion away from the view of the path.
The
Yeah,
walking
especially in
path.
that lot 37 right there. That's a,
Yeah, just,
That's a-
there's just.
yeah, that's going
there's
to be
only
pretty,
3
I
or
mean, the
4
only thing
lots
it
that are
might,
there.
it's defining what you would say is the view corridor. 37 is pretty much positioned as far on that west side to take advantage of the golf course view, which opens up that new common area too. The other thing that we did, and I think it came from you, Ben, on a suggestion on lot 27 that we reduced that building envelope off that ridge, and so we moved that. I think that might be
I
shown
think
on
that
the-
was what we were
also on
talking
the plan.
about. Just not, we know that it's big and you can put the house where you want. The concern was from the walking path that you visibly wouldn't see the homes because they'd be on the opposite side of that little lava ridge there. But
Yeah, you'll
That's
see the
understand.
homes from the walking path. But we do have that buffer all the way, just in that one little portion, the walking path makes a loop up right there, and there's a little bench sitting right there. And that's pretty much where that open space 2 is located, to try and preserve that corridor.
I know, and I think you will take care of that. That was part of the agreement, so.
Yeah, you're gonna see it on 37. There, 37 and 38, you're gonna see those, and you'll see the tops of 28 and 29. Those are the, but you can see in the contours on this, they took the one lot out next to between 37 and 38,
took 2 lots.
preserved all of that.
Yeah, 2 lots out, yeah.
And then 28 and 29 were the ones that, again, you look where the contours are, and from the trail, you'll see all the face of that lava based on that, and then you preserve that buffer, that open space there.
Yeah,
So-
most of the height of those homes, because the height of the home, the highest point is going to be away from the path. Because in the back of the home is basically going to be.
And my
along
concern
the
is
front
not
of it.
so much that, because we're going to also be viewing the retirement community from the pathway, so it's not like we're unobstructed. I mean, it's just, you're going to make as much possible as you can, and so. To me, that's,
We're used to doing that. It's got to look good for everybody, and we look at it from every angle that way.
And maybe a point on that, I was just doing the math. What's the total lots in here? Sorry, I was.
40.
So you got 40 lots. Originally, phase 5 was zoned for a kind of a multifamily density at 8 per unit. That's, if I do the math right, it's like 192 and we're down to 40. Yeah, we go from 18 to 13 on the acreage, but I think we're preserving 37 is going to be 37 and 38. You're going to see those homes, but we're going to preserve the lava that comes out there, you can see right where the trail goes by, but I mean, it's pretty close there to 37.
But the other thing we try to do is color wise, like we do in Entrada. It's just blend it right into the cliffs so those homes look like they're part of that.
Yeah, so, but the math puts it at 40 versus a potential of 192, which was originally in that area, so. And the golf course got moved. If you look at again, it was colored bubble maps. The golf course got moved down in the valley, so we're not on top of these ridges now. I do like shrinking the roads to really preserve what lava there is through there, so.
Brock, can you scroll down to like the last page of the packet that shows the comparison of Area 6 what they're proposing and what the old one was? It should be the very last. So I know that there wasn't like public comment on this, but I've been pulled over a lot in the grocery store, at church, about the difference here. And I just know like a lot of families take family photos right there. It's a really unique corridor where you have the black and Pine Valley behind and the red as well. And I don't know, I just feel my position as a city councilman is to protect just really unique areas of the city. And this has been pointed out to me multiple times by residents that I appreciate that the developer will do their best to maintain those two corridors, but the reality is there could be a house 20, 30 feet from that trail. And so I think this is a pretty significant change to Area 6. And I was on the council when we approved that original plan. I know the planning commission went out and walked it back then. And really where it was situated was not like exact, but you can tell this is a pretty big change. And so my main concern is just those lower lots, I think basically 37 and 38. Really, I think we have to really take that really seriously if we're going to approve this, of how that's going to change those view corridors from that trail. I'm trying, which ones are those exactly? Well, see, this map shows the old lots. As you can see, there were 4 lots, now there's 2. But basically 37 grew quite a bit, as well as 38. So, I mean, that's just my main concern. Like, I like the project overall. I think they've done a lot of really good things. It's just, that is one of my sticking points. And I know Councilman Mathis was very adamant about, because she was on the planning commission at that time too, about those lower lots. It is 37 and 38 that those are definitely infringing on what we anticipated would be protected in Area 6.
Are you done? Sorry.
Yes, I am.
Hi,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. So I was on the site visit and I wonder if someone can clarify for me, because I feel like I got 2 different answers. You had the poles with the pink. Is that potentially back of home or back of lot? Is that lot line?
The PVC pipes.
So we were told that was back of home.
I heard both ways though.
So the latest time we staked out there, sorry, Jared Bates, Rosenberg Associates, it would have been the setback. So it wouldn't be the lot line, they were the setbacks. So they were not, so they were probably like
Be the home.
Potential back of home.
potential location for the home. And I did, just to clarify again, we got rid of the 2 lots that were in the space we felt like had the most lava that we wanted to preserve. So that was where you see the 2 lots in the middle there, that map, that was what we took out. And that was based on the feedback we had at our sidewalks. I feel pretty comfortable with what we tried to accommodate that view that was there. So.
Thank you.
And I went out and walked it with my wife and we looked at exactly where 37 would be. And that is a very unique view as well. It is looking the other direction, but that's one of my main concerns for sure. I know we talked on the site visit about site 38. It like drops down a little bit. It would almost probably blend a little bit more with the development to the east, but it's really that 37 that is troublesome for me.
I'm wondering if you can include a condition to where maybe you bring back a a detailed site plan and elevation or a rendering on 37 prior to issuance of the building permit. So after you've done your site reconnaissance, that you come back to council on that specific lot prior to getting any disturbance on the pad itself, if that would help with the concerns from the council to be able to see what the projected disturbance would be on that lot and how they're mitigating that disturbance, if that would work to resolve that concern.
Yes, I just think, I was hoping we would have something like that before actually changing Area 6 officially. And so that's kind of where my concern lies, that if we approve this, Area 6 is officially changed, it's over, like, it's gonna be really hard to go back and change what that conservation easement's gonna be. We've already said you can have your lot lines there, and then we're just like, yeah, we'll review where the house is, but there's gonna be something there either way, and maybe that's not exactly how Area 6 was contemplated originally. So I feel like that is a midway. I'm just not sure if that's exactly what we want to do.
I'd also want to see, I guess, I'm assuming they can put a fence all the way to the back of their lot line. And that's something
Their
else.
CCNRs don't allow that. do they?
They don't?
No.
Well, that's good.
lava.
An idea could be, instead of a fence, I know they have the entrada style walls where you have the lava that's built up as a fence or a wall. Potentially, you could build something like that along 37 to block with a view from the trail. Out of. So I mean, a way to disguise or camouflage more the view that's there if there's a question of the house.
But part of the reason that view is so good there is because the golf course has been moved from the original layout. They've moved it down into the lower part and down into where the blue part of Area 5 is, where the housing would have been. And again, what it could have been 35-foot multifamily housing through there. So yeah, I don't disagree with putting some berming and that restrictions on it. I think overall what we're getting in the long run is better. You're getting lower density and better view of the golf course, in my opinion.
I agree, and it's just, as I've talked to residents, they've told me the view is the priority here. We appreciate the drop in density, but the view is the priority. And so that's the trade-offs you take, but like,
And
I
if you
really
look
have
where
gotten
the-
stopped a lot on this. This is my neighborhood that's all behind there, and it's been like, there's just a lot of like premeditated sorrow in my neighborhood about how this will change that view.
But Brock, will you scroll to the original? I mean, if we look at the original, you lose the east ridge of lava to the golf course, and you lose the south ridge to the golf course on the original developer control map. I mean, that's, the reality is we go from 18 to 13 acres, but your golf course is now chewing up the areas that we were so concerned, except for the one by the trail. But the lots 27, 28, that whole ridge gets nuked with this golf course the way it was. I mean, again, I know it's just a bubble map, but that's what was approved. And then all your 190 units go inside that 24 acres there. So I don't know. I don't know if there's some language we can put on 37 as far as screening for the trail, and maybe that's, you're not gonna have a wall, you're not gonna have a stucco wall. Maybe it's height restrict, as Kent said, that home's gonna be flipped with the views looking up the golf course. So you're looking at a 12-foot roof on the back, and then it's gonna step up. But maybe there is, I shouldn't say maybe, because we do it all the time, just some language that puts that as a lower I don't know, as low profile as you can toward the trail. You can't maybe.
Yeah, that would be an easy thing to do, is to restrict that to 19 feet on that lot. Because that was one of the 6 lots that could go up higher.
Yeah.
But I know what the owner's going to do with that lot, and it's going to be a single level home. But what we're restricting them to is 19 feet. And the highest point of that house will be on the golf course.
On the north end.
And then the way the house is going to sit, the garage will be at the front. But we could easily submit a three-dimensional look. I mean, they have to submit three-dimensional looks to the design and review committee for us, but just showing what that looks like from the trail.
And can you remind me, is there a certain space that's non-disturbance area within the lot as well?
Well, they're required to submit a grading plan, which showing the areas that they will disturb, and we hold them to that. In a lot of cases, we make them fence it off so they don't touch anything else. And then what they do disturb, they have to restore back. So it looks like the house and some of the outside hardscape is set right down into that lava.
There's not a requirement that they, the way I understand it anyway, that they don't disturb 60% of the lot or something like that. A lot of these lots, if you look in the center, it's the former pit for the Village Rock. So 100% of all that area in the middle of the project has already been disturbed. And I think the intent there, correct me if I'm wrong, Kent, would be to go back in there when you're finished and actually mitigate that disturbance as well.
All of it, anything that's disturbed.
So
during
that you
construction.
end up with the seamless, the intent of the development, the way I understand it, is to preserve as much of the lava as you can and restore as much of the disturbed lava as you can following the disturbance for the home construction.
That's in our design guidelines.
Yeah, similar to what was done on Entrada
It's the
in
same.
the
yeah.
lava. So end up making some improvements to the existing view shed by restoring some of that previously disturbed rock and be able to mitigate some of that in the view as well.
I mean, the other thing we wanted to is, I mean, you could do what you need to on the building, but when it comes to landscaping, I mean, if somebody goes in and puts 20 more trees in, they go 50 feet high. And we limit that also, just so that the landscape trees stay lower than the roof line of the house.
I guess another thought I've had is as we're looking at this map right here, like this was what was presented to us back then. And I never would have anticipated a home next to the trail. The trail's on there. You can see how close the golf course was supposed to be to that trail. It was anticipated you'd have this beautiful view of a golf course, of Pine Valley, of the cliffs, and instead you'll be seeing the back of a house in parts of that view. So that's just my struggle of what was initially presented to us and what we're wrestling with right now. And the other thing is, if you go back again to the bottom one, you can see how much of lot 37 has changed from what's on this map, but there really is room on lot 37 to build a house and totally stay out of area 6 that was previously contemplated. You know, there's still quite a bit of blue there that's out of area 6 on lot 37. And that would push it away from the trail quite a ways if it stayed within that blue area. And I can understand giving up part of area 6 for that road and the lots above that. Like, I think that, I'm not sure exactly how that little jag got added to the area 6, but from my impression back then, it was really what you see from the trail, what you see from the road. And so I think that might be something we could also contemplate, that just area 6 does change, but there's definitely some restrictions on lots 37 and maybe 38. But again, that might take the developer coming back and actually showing us where it's going to be on 37. I hoped we would have that tonight. That was at least contemplated on our tour. And I think that's been asked of the developers in the past by city staff, and it hasn't been produced yet. And I know that I was told there's an important client that wants 37. So maybe that there's some, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but I'm just hesitant to change area 6 without really knowing what's going to change that view corridor. And again, I'll go back to, I've had good discussions with Councilwoman Mathis about this, that she was pretty adamant that we'd be really careful with this.
So where do you want to go, council?
Well, in my mind, I think we could approve this conditionally with the planning commission recommendations and deed restriction on with lot 37, considering what you want to do and what we would like to have done with that particular lot. So you're able to move forward with that plan.
And in that case, Denny, does that come back to council to look at, or is that just a staff approval?
I bring it back to council.
Okay.
Council's where the concern is.
Right.
In that, is it more of, are we looking for a build pad, almost
Yeah.
a foot? I mean, we probably don't need, maybe you do, maybe you want
I think you need
elevation.
the elevation.
The elevations and
Because then
everything.
the elevations allows them to look at how the impact to the view shed is going to be with that home in place on the lot. And the mitigation allows them to present the mitigation at the same time.
I would recommend the elevation versus the pad, because I think the pad can provide an unclear description of what's actually happening.
Right.
You know, you have the 3D version, these guys can do a good job in camouflaging exactly what's happening, so you can get a better feel for what's going on.
Yeah, I think you want the elevation.
The elevation, but the other thing, and Jarrett brings it up, and I may slightly disagree, but looking at this in the original area that could be encroached into of area 6 for this lot, do we need a building envelope? So you have the envelope, you identify that plus the
You
elevation.
have to do the envelope to do the rendering.
Yeah.
All that has to be done. The rendering is the final product of that process. So they've got to design the house, site the house, and then they can do the rendering. So you're going to get all of that with that presentation.
That would be my motion.
Okay. He just turned that into a motion. Is there a second so we can discuss it?
So
Do you want me to restate his motion?
restate
You
the
probably
motion,
didn't
because
hear it.
there's, I think there's.
My motion is that we accept the preliminary plat as proposed by South Village at Black Desert with the recommendations of the planning commission, and that lot 37 be presented with a rendering of where the home is and the elevations for that home.
Prior to any disturbance on the lot.
I would second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Motion by Denny and a second by Ben. To approve the preliminary plat and the zone. Forget my agenda. There's a lot going on right here.
I think it's just preliminary
Just a
plat. Mayor.
preliminary plat.
Well, the proposed
South
PD,
Village.
you're doing the PDR zone amendment and preliminary plat for the proposed South Village of Black Desert subdivision, subject to the 15 conditions as stated by the planning commission, and the additional condition that a rendering with elevations be presented to demonstrate the disturbance on lot 37 to the city council prior to any disturbance on the lot. That it?
That's it.
Questions?
Can I have a question on my own second? So
Just don't ask me to repeat.
the condition is with, we want to just make sure that it comes to city council for approval. The other condition, and I don't have the item in front of me, is just specific to the fire sprinklers that
Let me amend my motion by saying that we will go with the recommendation of the fire marshal, and if it works not to have it, we'll work with that. If it works to have it, we'll work with that.
I would include that in my
Include that
second.
in your second.
Yes.
Okay. Any question on that motion?
I have some questions, Mayor.
Line up.
I do.
guys. Ladies first.
Well, my question just is if we were to approve that, I mean, Councilman Waite brings up the point about lot 37, if that could be reduced in size, can we reduce the size after we approve it? Or is this, we're just looking at the house to make sure we approve how the house looks on the lot?
I don't know that you would have to reduce the size of the lot because that's such a big lot, that house is going to move around on the lot. You may have them move it to a different location on the lot. The lot probably would have to be redesigned.
And this is a preliminary plat.
They
The
can
final
vary.
plat still coming back to planning commission and council for approval. So we'll come back to you with this information.
And the beauty with today's software is we'll be able to get a very good
Very
look,
good.
standing on that trail of what that looks like.
My other question is, could we include lot 38 in that motion?
That's also my question.
Include 38 too. 38's the other
Would
lot
see renderings of
adjacent to the
38.
trail. Include that in there as well.
If it's part of that view shed, I do it with 38 too.
Second, do the same thing.
Sorry, I threw food in my mouth. Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I know Matt's got some.
I want to hear Matt's questions.
Okay, Matt, you're up.
Okay. Well, first of all, Denny, when you first were explaining your motion, you mentioned deed restriction, and I just wanted to make sure for the record, we're not talking about a deed
No, we're not.
restriction,
We're
so.
talking about a rendering.
Right, okay. So my next question is, what's proposed is a preliminary plat, and it sounds like an amendment to the project plan is how it's framed. So part of my question is, how does the city council anticipate this coming back to them? Because you will have to approve this as final plat. So this isn't the last time that you see this. Are you anticipating that the renderings will come back to you as part of the final plat approval, or are you anticipating this will be a separate approval?
I would anticipate that would happen before the final plat comes back, because any results of the rendering would have to be reflected on the final plat.
Okay,
And not only that, the motion included before any groundwork was done on those lots. So it would almost, before they could come in with the final plats, they'd have to do the final groundwork. We'd have to approve it.
okay, so the one thought that I'm having is if you're going to require that before they come back with the final plat, from a procedural standpoint, it may make sense for you to get that before you approve the preliminary plat, because they're going to have to come back anyway.
How do you come back? Like, again, I know you have somebody on 37, but not 38. So how do you anticipate a design there? My question was, is there something you could just put on the plat and note that just states that lot 37 and 38 require
yeah.
city council approval for the renderings prior to obtaining a building permit? Or does that become a deed restriction?
Well, a couple of thoughts about this, and you're kind of anticipating where I'm going with this, Ben. If you frame it that way, if you say this has to come back to the city council to approve renderings before a building permit is issued, I mean, you're assuming a pretty detailed role in the approval process for these lots, right? One that you wouldn't, even with a PD zone, you probably wouldn't go to that level of detail on an individual lot, on an individual building permit. I admit that gives me a little pause, because what's the standard for that review? It's probably going to be, you're probably not going to have as much discretion as you might have sitting here right now, considering this preliminary plat, to say yay or nay on something. I know that applicant's anxious to move this forward. I think that what we're talking about renderings and elevations, it does frankly go beyond the original discussion of Area 6, which was to preserve an area on the ground. There, in our previous discussions of Area 6, there was not that I recall any discussions about what the view looks like from Area 6 and what's going to be built next to Area 6. It was, we want to preserve Area 6, this area that's indicated on this map. So again, I'm just a word of caution. This is This is getting into the weeds quite a bit more than the city council normally would on this kind of a question. And so from my perspective, I personally would be much more comfortable if we're trying to preserve an area on the ground, let's indicate that on the plat. You know, if we are comfortable having that as part of the plat that's approved, but we still want it preserved, that can be indicated on the plat. We don't have to, you know, have a separate review of elevations and those kinds of things to accomplish that. So anyway, that's my concern. I certainly don't want to slow the process up unnecessarily, and I want the council's concerns to be addressed. But, you know, I also don't want to get into the weeds too far. So those are my concerns.
And I don't know if it would be helpful on behalf of applicant, but this really is a lot wagging the dog for us. And we've got a lot of need to move forward. I'm wondering if it's possible to approve the preliminary plat exclusive of 37, that the plat may be amended to re-add 37 once the height concerns are addressed.
Exclude 37 and 38 from the preliminary plat.
Correct. That way we can move forward. We could even go to final plat on everything but those. Plat can be amended and added later.
I think that would be fine if that's what the council would like to do.
I mean, we're dealing with one right now that had a similar thing, that it was left out of the plat just because there were a lot of uncertainties. Again, that's, I think, what we're trying to, I think overall, we're happy with everything there. It's just a couple concerns that.
And balancing, and time isn't our friend right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's probably the cleanest way to do it.
Then I'll
Amend your motion.
amend my motion to approve the preliminary plat and exclude lots 37 and 38 from that preliminary plat.
With the 15.
Yeah, still following the recommendations of the planning commission.
And
Includes
if you,
the-
And the fire.
Which includes the fire.
I would second that.
Questions on that motion, council?
How is area 6 being changed with that motion? Is it exactly what we see here? We are approving this new area 6.
You're approving the roadway, but nothing south of the roadway.
And the 2 lots on the north side of the road.
You're approving the 2 lots on the north and the road, but nothing to the south of that.
Yes, except for the open space. The open space that is, that was a.
Yeah,
in between.
that ought to be clarified because you excluded those 2 lots, but you didn't mention how you want to address the open space between the 2 lots. Because that is part of the plat.
I don't want to exclude the open space. We'll include that as not part of the plat. Exclude the open space in the 2 lots from the
So every-
plat, preliminary plat.
So would you just make it phase
South
2?
of The roadway would be.
Just a phase 2,
excluded.
right?
Open space area 2.
So.
I mean, it's already going to be open space anyway, so, but really, still doesn't change 37 and 38 being there.
Right, so would you want just those, so 37, 38, that open space as a phase 2? And that would change nothing on that
That's how
side.
I would do it. So
And,
that
and that's cleanest.
your phase 2 is 37, 38, and the open space in between.
But you'd come back for phase 2.
Yeah, I mean, that would,
That's being removed.
however they
Those
decide to
2
bring it
lots
back.
They may want to reconfigure those lots a little bit when they go through the exercise of the detailed site plan.
right.
I'm confused.
That's pretty easy to do.
So, yeah, it turns those 2 lots in the open space into phase 2. It gives time for the
That's
applicant.
area 6 anyway, so let's just approve the preliminary plat, leaving 37, 38, the open space between out.
But it's intended that the applicant's coming back
As a phase
to
2.
look at that
And he
area.
can come back, or he
That's
doesn't
up to
have to come
them,
back.
yeah.
It's still left as open space if he doesn't come back.
It's not part of the preliminary plat that we're approving tonight, the way the motion stated.
That's
Okay.
satisfy you, Jeff?
Close. I'm just curious, where does area 6 end up then? Where are the actual lines for it with that?
The
motion?
south side of that road,
And actually, it's in the BLM property out south. of
or the
town.
north the north side of lot 37, 38, and that open space.
So basically the road is
Yeah,
the edge,
the
the
road
new
is
edge of
the
area
edge.
6.
And it keeps the bit that keeps going to the west of 37. That one stays the same.
It provides the utility corridor and a second access connection to the point.
Right, which is important.
We get Matt made it, make it work.
Is that officially part of the motion of where the line changes for area 6? Or
Yeah,
is
I mean,
that,
it's basically defining
Built in.
area 6 is the south side of that road.
Yeah, so everything included in the plat that you approved would be excluded from area 6.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And then they come back subsequently with detailed preliminary plat, including those renderings for that area south of.
Yeah, I think it's just so we all understand that we're moving the line to that road with the intent that the applicant's coming
Sure.
back.
But they're not getting any vested right to develop 37, 38 in the open space tonight.
Right.
Tonight's action. They still have to climb that mountain.
Right.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, sir.
Do I have any more questions? on the motion?
No.
Okay, let's do roll call vote. Ben,
Aye.
Krista,
Aye.
Danny,
Aye.
Jarrett,
aye.
motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, item number 4 was tabled. I need a motion to table item 4.
I move that we table item 4 on the agenda.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Kristen, second by Jared. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 5, discussion and action to consider a proposed code amendment to the Santa Clara zoning ordinance, section 17.18, amendments to land use ordinance, zoning map, and general plan. This includes general cleanup, updating of the zoning ordinance, and approve ordinance 2023-13. Santa Clara City's the applicant. Jim?
Thanks, Mayor. We wanted to bring this item before you tonight. This is something that myself and Matt Entz have been working on. It's a simple cleanup to chapter 17, 18. If you could go to the text. Yeah, further down. So the main point here is if we scroll all the way down, the other stuff is just kind of cleanup and wordsmithing. What we've done here, or general cleanup, we provided a new section to be known as 17-18-100 general plan amendments. And this would state that the general plan may be amended from time to time by city council. General plan amendments will be considered on a quarterly basis by the city. A, all proposed amendments shall be submitted first to the planning commission for consideration at a public hearing. The city council shall consider the recommendation at a public meeting and make a final determination to adopt, modify, or deny the proposed amendment. B, for a general plan amendment, which includes a rezoning of property and a required project plan to a planned development PD zone, the general plan amendment may include a condition that the rezoning application on which the general plan amendment is based must be approved within a 1-year timeline, where the property reverts to the general plan prior to approval of the amendment. So if you recall, we've had some recent discussions, a good number of general plan amendments that we've seen, and they're coming in and just wanting to be processed. What we're saying is let's process these on a quarterly basis. So we would bring general plan amendments to the planning commission for a public hearing 4 times a year, and then they would come to council after that. So we could have a quarter where we have 2 or 3 general plan amendments. We could have a quarter where we have 1 general plan amendment. And it's fairly common. I did a little benchmarking checked with St. George. They do it on a quarterly basis. Washington City told me they do it pretty much that way, but don't have it on the books. I've seen others that don't limit this to twice a year. I think that's too limiting. I think a quarterly basis is pretty good. So we would process them in January, April, July, and October, the beginning of the 4 quarters. They would go to planning commission and then come to the council after that. So there could be a little bit of overlap into the next month, but I asked about how the developers take that or the applicants take that. Hasn't really been an issue once the word gets out. I mean, they're asking for a pretty big modification, just like a rezoning of property. They're asking for us to consider amending our general plan. So We feel this is clear and concise and will help things moving forward. And the Planning Commission did have a public hearing on this item on May 25th of 2023. And they did forward a recommendation of approval to the city council. And so we're recommending that the city council approve the proposed code amendment to chapter 1718 this evening. Again, the rest of it's just general cleanup. The main thing is the change or addition of 1718-100, which we currently don't have on the books.
Speak up a little bit. They're having a hard time.
Oh, really? Okay. We must be having an issue with our microphones tonight. So anyways, it's a general cleanup and addition of one section.
Let me ask a question. I don't know. So we have a general plan. General plans are done normally over 5 years.
Actually, about every 10 years for a city of our size. It would be updated about every 10 years for a city that's growing large and really fast and maybe approaching 100,000 people or more. Those are generally updated every 5 years.
Okay, and so we do a general plan and it's only good for 3 months?
No,
No, this is if
No.
you want to change. the
this is if you're
existing general
requesting an
plan,
amendment.
You have to submit in one of those. You can't do it anytime you want. You do it in those 4 months that he mentioned.
You can submit it, but we're going to process them on a quarterly basis
I
to
understand,
amend it.
but What I'm trying to understand is, if we're going to have a general plan that we're basically telling the citizens that for the next 5 years, you're not going to see much of a change to that general plan. What we're going to say that you can actually see a change to a residential area every quarter. If I want to come in and develop high density on a residential zone, and that's a change to the general plan, then I can come in quarterly to do that change, right?
You can submit it. Anybody can submit an application. A property owner has a right to amend a general plan or request a rezoning of property, which are both legislative decisions made by the city council. What we're saying is if you submit a general plan amendment in May and we find it to be complete, we'll process that in July
Right.
because we're
I
going to do it on a
understand.
quarterly basis. But the general plan, we're 9 years into our general plan. Okay, so our general plan was done in 2014. There were amendments to it in 2017. So we're looking at probably needing to redo our general plan in the next year or two. That's a subject for a different day. That's something where we
Well, I
all need to talk and
understand
have a
that.
large scale discussion on how to do
But
that.
what locks in areas for residential versus density areas? So that there is within your general plan some guarantees that
Right.
last longer than a quarter.
Denny,
Well-
there are no guarantees.
Okay, that's
You-
what I'm saying.
You as the legislative body can legislate and change it pretty much anytime you want to. So the simple answer to your question.
It's a
is there's no
guideline.
And the state
guarantees.
has already done that to us.
Yes,
There is no single family residential anymore because we can rent a
internal
home
dwelling
within our
unit.
residential area.
Well,
And
and that's a different issue. I mean, if we're talking about how often can you change the general plan? Right now, you as the city council, as the legislative body can change it pretty much anytime you want to.
which we've been
So
doing, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think this is, because we've seen so many coming, so fast at trying to get them and say, hey, they're gonna come at a certain time. But if council wants to, council can, I mean, you could direct us, we put in at a quarterly basis. If you guys, I mean, you guys make the policy, if you guys said, we only want to do it once a year, we're not gonna do it at all for 5 years, that's a direction you could give us and say, and not gonna allow it at all.
But is
But
that
this-
legal?
Well,
No,
Huh?
we would be sued tomorrow if you did that.
Well, well, in essence, you guys get to look at those general plan amendments and get to decide, do you want to do them or not? When
right.
you
But if we're a
ultimately get to decide,
legislative body,
it's
you
just,
can do it anytime. Why can't we limit it?
So if
Try
you
it.
said we're not going to accept any general plan applications for a year, I wouldn't be surprised if the response from someone wanting a general plan change would be, that's an illegal moratorium because you violated the state code that says you can only limit your activity on land use applications for up to 6 months. So there is some limit on what you can do, but you have the right to vote no on any general plan application, change application that comes before you.
And we have
that's-
brought
and that's how
multiple
you-
before you in the last year with negative recommendations. Is this not working?
It's just my hearing.
I'm sorry. We have brought multiple general plan amendment applications to you with a recommendation for denial
Correct.
this past year. And so there are ones that will come and the thought would be denial, and the other times it could be approval, but really it's a legislative decision. They have a right to apply, go to planning commission. It's a public hearing. Planning commission can give a recommendation of denial or approval to the council, and then the council decides yay or nay. Thumbs up, thumbs down. It's your decision.
So what is different about this process than the process we're already doing?
Because we're limiting the number of times we bring them to you. We're looking to bring them on a quarterly basis to you rather than if we could have them every month. We had them lined up to where we were receiving quite a few and bringing them to you in successive meetings in a row, where we would just bring general plan amendments to you once every 3 months for your consideration at a meeting. And there could be 2 or 3 of them. There could be 1.
And that's different than a 3-month moratorium.
Yes.
It's not a 6-month moratorium.
Is the purpose just, are you trying to protect us or are you trying to protect staff, or what's the reason behind it? Because part of me is like, well, I'd rather hear 1 every month versus 3 on a 5-hour meeting in July. I don't know. I mean, I don't.
Well, it might get to you in August because it goes to the planning commission in July
Yeah,
based on
yeah,
public
but
hearings, but we were directed to take a look at this and change the process. Matt, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you my opinion, Ben, and whether anybody else agrees with it or not. I think the main purpose for this is really, once we made a decision to fully separate general plan amendments from zone changes, which we've done recently, we used to bring those through in parallel, but we have not been doing that. We've been requiring applicants to do those in succession. Then this seemed to be sort of the next logical step. Again, to separate the idea of a general plan change, which I think should be, in most cases, considered more significant than a zone change, right? It just seemed like a natural next step. I think it does. I think it helps Jim manage his, workload, where he can, if a general plan application comes in and, he's got 2 months before it comes through, he gives him some more flexibility rather than having the pressure of a developer, pushing to have that go through with his own change. But to me, the main point is let's give it the due significance that it should have. It's not the same as a zone change. It shouldn't be quite as easy to amend the general plan as it is to change a zone.
So
that's
is that
just
what
my-
we're just trying to do, is kind of discourage it by or
Not
just-
discourage it, but just to make clear to people that, if you want to change the general plan, it may take a little longer, it may require a little more work than a zone change. Whereas before, in the past, we almost treated them like they were the same thing. So again, that's just my opinion.
I was just trying to understand what's driving this.
My other question would be, so if the city wants to redo their general plan and they want to do it, do they bring it to the planning commission through the city council to do a general plan
Yeah.
change? So if we want to look at a general overall plan for Santa Clara, and the city council is in favor of making those changes, we still have to go through the planning commission.
Yes,
and the
yes.
city council.
So it, as you know, it's an involved process, you know, involves a lot of open houses and public and a lot of visioning and things of that nature. But then prior to adopting such a document, a new general plan for the city of Santa Clara, you have to go through the same public hearing process and adoption process.
The last one we did, we actually formed a citizen advisory committee that kind of oversaw
I think,
the.
I like the
area
idea.
changes.
I'm just looking at it and saying, okay, if I'm a citizen developer, I can get it done in a quarter. If I'm a city council,
Right.
it may take me a year.
Well, we're looking
Well,
at the
you
entire
can
city, not
apply
just
once
one
a
parcel.
quarter. It may take you a year anyway. as a
Yeah,
citizen.
we're looking at the whole city.
Yeah, and I think there's different general plan amendments. I look at what's come to us. I look at the man caves we had over here on Arrowhead and that was denied. And it required a general plan amendment because you had two competing zones.
Correct.
And so it was tabled or denied. And so now you're saying, well, we want you to do an R16, which is a pretty easy work for a company, but we're saying, well, you can't bring it back for 90 days. So I look at it from that side going, okay, now we're just really stalling out the process on something that has to be amended versus maybe what we're dealing with, you know, up on the heights and some, you know, some of these others. So I don't know. Again, I'm kind of impartial on it going,
But
I would personally rather, I mean, I'm fine if this is the direction we want to go.
I'm fine with this also. I just don't see that it's much of a change over what we've been doing. But
I just see long meetings with this. I got a feeling we're gonna have a couple long meetings a year, so that's all because they are gonna fall. You're gonna have them all in one.
I like the idea of streamlining and consolidating them. I think it's great.
Quick question, do we anticipate that most of these will still come with the rezoning at that same time? Or do you think it'll be decoupled completely?
They're going to be after. So the general plan will come first. The decision will be made. And then if it's in their favor, they'll go to the next step, which is submitting a rezoning application, and that will be handled separately.
Okay,
Not concurrently because we've moved away from that. We're handling them separately.
okay. So in the past, we've been able to see kind of what their intention is on that property. Will that not be part of that decision anymore?
No, with the general plan amendment, we're still getting a concept plan and an idea, a flavor, a feel. I mean, there's one in the works right now for the corner of Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive. There's a public hearing on that tomorrow night, and they've developed quite a bit by hiring an architect. And so that's something the council will see in July. So.
Okay.
I think that actually raises another good point with this proposed change is that we don't currently have a provision in our ordinance that says that an approved general plan amendment reverts if there's not an approved zone change. And one of the reasons we did used to bring them through concurrently is so that you could kind of see what was going to be there. You know, you could approve both of them together. This way, you know, since we've already made the decision to do them separately, again, I think it makes some sense to make the general plan amendments a little bit more significant, but also this provides some protection so that if you approve a general plan amendment and then a zone change comes through and you just don't like it, you decide not to approve it, you know, within a year, this automatically will revert that general plan amendment back to the original. So I really like that. I think it helps prevent, you know, a situation where you approve a general plan and then for whatever reason, maybe the developer doesn't continue or property owners change. This will clean that up so that you don't have.
So it gives them a year to get the zone.
Gives them a year to
change.
get the zone changed.
Nothing else, just the zone change.
Just the zone change. Yeah.
I think Krista's ready to
Streamline.
go. I do like it.
Well, you never know. I mean, sometimes they may change their mind. The market could dictate, they could, you know, obtain other partners. Sometimes these things take time. So.
I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready.
Go for it.
All right, I move that we approve the code amendment to the Santa Clara zoning ordinance, section 17.8, 17.18, amendments to land use ordinance, zoning map and general plan, and approve ordinance 2023-13 as presented.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Jarrett, and a second by Krista to approve the proposed code amendments to Santa Clara City zoning ordinance, section 17.18 as presented, and approve ordinance 2023-13. Any question on that motion? This is an ordinance. Roll call. Jarrett,
Aye.
Benny, Krista,
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Thank you, council.
Thank
Passes
you.
unanimously. Thanks, Jim. Discussion and action to consider city office lighting system work bid award. Cody?
Hey, good evening. Yes, this agenda item is to discuss the bids received to replace the lighting control system for City Hall and to request approval of the expenditure. This item was brought to my attention early on with my employment. As I walked through the building, I noticed multiple fluorescent fixtures that were out. In doing some research and talking to employees with longevity, mainly Gary and Eric and their crew, they had done some ballast change outs on fluorescent lights, and they were kind of striking out and finding the same ballast. I went further into that and I found the same ballast, but for the money, they had kind of opted and pointed me in a direction to change out the lights and retrofit to LED, which I thought was a great idea. If we were going to invest the same money in ballasts and improve the existing fixtures, let's bring them current to the LED standard for cost savings and longevity. The second item that kind of drove me to pursue this further was Swiss days. There was a request just a simple request to turn on the lights for the 5K. We want them on at 5 o'clock in the morning. The outside lights, parking lots, light. We need light for our start and finish line. I said, no problem. I went to Brock and I said, Brock, how do I turn on the lights? I need them on at 5. We managed to get them on, but they stayed on for 20 minutes and they went out. That was one of my first indications that we had problems with the controller. So I invited a Lutron rep, that's the existing system. I invited them to come and visit, see if we could upgrade or, let me flash back. Prior to me, Corey had a representative through Lutron that he was in contact with that would help him, because it's always been problematic as I learned more about the system. So that guy has since retired. Can't get a hold of him, and he's probably toes in the sand somewhere. So I contacted, I was led to another gentleman. He's out of Salt Lake. He does all the retrofittings for the LDS church. And so he was well versed in Lutron as well as a system called Watt Stopper. So he came down and he looked into the upgrades or trying to make this system work. He spent a lot of time on it, retained reps from Build 26, which is Lutron's representative little co-part. They're the engineers behind Lutron. And long story longer, I wasn't satisfied at that. So I invited 5 electricians out, 4 of which gave me numbers. So I've had Watt Stopper here, I've had a representative from Crestron, and then the original PR Electric, who is a Lutron installer. And then there's another local company out of Hurricane that also installs Lutron. Now, Lutron has 2 different systems, a Vive system that's based more for commercial application and a homework system. PR Electric out of Northern Utah, they specialize and have more experience with the Vive system, where Hurricane specializes more in the homework system. Both systems are good systems. They're reliable, and it's hard for me to say they're reliable because Lutron is the current system we have that is kind of obsolete. But I hear a lot of good stuff about the Lutron system, but more the homework system. There was a little price break. Those were my 2 most competitive bids. The price break was a little bit less on the homework system, but it doesn't have the capabilities we need for the commercial application. One of the main parts of the system we need is the emergency lighting. The homework system, they can program it in, but it isn't a built-in function. So I don't want to go down that road. Emergency lighting is key in commercial use. So I lean more towards the installation of the Vive system. Any questions for me at this point? I'll carry on.
You're making a recommendation that we purchase what?
Well, it comes in two parts. Like I said, when I first got started, I entertained an electrician. He came and gave me an estimate to retrofit LED lights. So I've set that aside. Before we retrofit and have these cool LED lights, we need to be able to control them. So the first phase is replacing the controller. The controller to buy the equipment. It's a two-part. That's the labor bid that's on the screen now. It's substantial. The estimate for the Lutron Vive system is $37,800 to buy the equipment. And then the installation is an additional $35,660 for a total of $73,460.
Does that give us new lights or just
No,
the control?
that's part one. That's the control. I've only received one estimate on the lights, and it was over 60,000 to retrofit the whole building with LED lights. So depending on when we're ready, I'd like to get on that part two of this maintenance item, the first part of this fiscal year. So I would be coming back hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months for the second part. Right now, we have the funds available in the maintenance and the maintenance and the improvements line items to cover this expenditure.
So it's in the budget.
Not under what we're using it for. There was a carport and things. that just keep-
Poor carport.
Does this lose our carport?
Parking.
This loses our
Covered parking
carport?
got lit for the
I
light
sacrificed
control.
another year.
I literally told
like
them,
8 years running
I wish
now.
there was a carport out there. I'm gonna go get you a little pop-up tent that you can pull into.
All right.
So the-
Questions, council?
So the total number is 78,000.
73,460.
And yet we've got another 60 beyond that,
Yes.
which would be phase three probably.
Roughly 60. I only received one number, so, and that was months ago. So I don't know with pricing and availability what that number is going to do. Can't imagine it came down.
These lights will still work with the new controls.
Yes,
How old's the building?
15, probably 15 going on 16 years old.
Does the 60
You
year?
kind of hit the lifespan of a lighting control. I mean, it's too due to be upgraded, but it's, yeah, as for lighting control, this is,
Well, as I looked into the current system, it was Lutron built this system under the mandates from California for energy conservation. And it seems like they may have struck out in a couple areas. That's just through my online research on why we're having to upgrade or look at replacement so soon in the lifespan of this equipment. It's been problematic, so we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Other questions, council?
Yeah, on your 60,000 for the lights, does that include any labor or is that just?
Yes, that was material and labor.
so this corrects your parking lot and your, this.
Our soffit lights, when you drive by in the evening, the soffit lights will be on, the parking lights will be on, 5K, and we can start and stop on time. Well, your time may be a little delayed, but
Yeah, I'm having a hard time losing the parking, the shade structure.
well,
Could you guys work with headlamps for a while we get the shade structure in? So,
no, I get it. I've been stewing over the dollar amount for a long time, looking at, I mean, I'd go back to switches, but it's not wired for that. The building is smart wired. There's low voltage to it. So to even go back to a switch system, it's very expensive. So
yeah, once you go lighting control, you're committed.
Brock said he could find a way to take it out of the, isn't it part of the ongoing need for?
Like ARPA funds or something?
For federal funds?
No, I was thinking out of
ARPA?
our,
Or ARPA funds.
yeah,
Yeah. This is,
Well, most ARPA is committed. Unless you want to go back a water line.
no. So I guess my question is, really I guess the looming question is, are we at the time this needs to be done? I mean, you kind of nursed it along for, I guess, from staff, you guys work in this building.
Well, I mean, it's not only Swiss days, it's when you try to override. I mean, first of all, the clock doesn't keep up. It slowly loses time through the day. So all of a sudden, instead of the lights going off at 5, they're going off at a couple minutes earlier every week, where you can come back and reset it. But then when you mess with the control panel, you'll lose other functions like override switches and things of that nature. So along with Swiss days, outside lighting, parking lot lighting, where you lose some control and function inside. I don't know if you've walked in this men's restroom when the light's off, but it takes a minute for the occupancy sensor to sense you're there. Everything's starting to just fade. So you could walk in and walk around the corner by the sink before the light or before the sensor recognizes you're in there. So it's like, hey, where's the light switch? And it's a beautiful building and we need to present it a little bit better.
I think it could fall under public safety impact fee.
Yes, especially with the wet floor sign out there. I'm open to suggestions. I know, Ben, I know you put Crestron in your builds.
We do a lot of Lutron too.
Oh, do you?
Again, I think you're, from a construction side and maintenance side, lighting control just requires maintenance. It requires upgrades and I mean, in 15 years, look what your phones have done, look what your computers have done. And that's really a lighting control system. And again, you turn around, you're going to put this money in, you're going to get 15, probably 20 years out of it but the technology's improved that much in 15 years that this system's going to be much, much better. And then you're gonna have the LED lighting, and so.
Yeah, it's a substantial number. I've been sitting on it for probably at least 6 months. And I can't find a way around it. I've tried.
We just need to sell more puzzles. That's the key. Krista?
I bet we can do it.
So there isn't approval.
Yeah, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that we approve the lighting changes with the let's see.
73,460.
But do you want the other included?
He hasn't presented it.
73,460 for the Lupron.
5.
Oh, and award the bid to PR Electric.
Yes, please.
And award the bid.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Denny and a second by Ben to award the bid for the new lighting system in the amount of 73,460 to PR Electric. Any question on that?
Thank you.
Money item, roll call, Ben,
Aye.
Krista,
Hi.
Denny,
Aye.
Jarrett.
Aye.
Thank you.
We just
Number
kicked the
7,
shade structure down the
did you
road.
sit here
I
through
know.
this whole meeting for this proclamation? I want to thank you and apologize to you for not noticing you until it was too late, and save you a bunch of pain and suffering. Usually I try and do this at the first of the meeting so you can go get some dinner. Now you know what we have to deal with. So come on up and introduce yourself, and your proclamation is in the packet.
Yes. So I'm Ryan Segmiller. I'm a senior at Desert Hills High School, and I'm the vice president of the Dixie Amateur Radio Club here in Southern Utah. You know, yes, you are right. We did sit through a little bit. I considered going to get a Little Caesars, but we held back. Go get a little.
Just be warned, you have to share if you do.
Might have to put in the reimbursement check for that one. All right. So how does this work? I've never been to one of these things. What's this?
You're asking for us to approve a proclamation. Tell us a little bit about what's in it.
Okay, so amateur radio is two-way radio communications. It's kind of interesting. So it's over 100 years old. Back in early 1900s, radio has just made a huge difference. Sorry, I have a little thing written up, but my eyesight is trying to read this crap.
Sitting through one of these meetings will do that.
All right, so the concepts and principles of radio broadcasting have impacted nearly every aspect of our current technology. Cell phones, diabetes, insulin pumps, scanners, that the fire department uses, the radios they use as well. And radio waves in general are all a part of our daily lives. Amateur radio operators have served as informal ambassadors of the communities they live in. You can make contact with other licensed amateur radio operators all over the world, and that has created a community of its own. Here in Washington County, we do have over 1,100 licensed amateur radio operators. The Dixie Amateur Radio Club in particular has about 10% of those operators as members of our board. We have been growing significantly as well. So amateur radio has been huge in the community for us, just with different things that go on. The marathon in the fall, we've been doing that for 20-some years. 25 years, look at that. Anyway, so we all set up and we run around supplies, we run around, say, hey, we need an ambulance. Hey, we need this, we need that. Okay. So amateur radio has been huge. I've been a part of it for about 3 years now, just over 3 years. And it's been awesome to be able to learn more of the science and everything of it. So with the proclamation that we've provided, we're looking for an amateur radio week this week, basically, because we do have an annual event called Field Day, the Summer Field Day, that is put on by the Amateur Radio Relay League, or the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL. They are our national fighting agency, right? So a lot of the amateur radio operators in the country are members of this organization because they're the ones that fight with the legislation and everything for our radio waves and allegations that way. So anyway, with the ARRL, they put on an event every year and have for, I think it's over 60 years now. I know it's at least 60 years. But they're putting on another event this year for amateur radio. The goal is just to make as many contacts with as many people as you can. That takes place on the 24th and the 25th this year. For anybody watching at home, hi mom. They will be participating in that event as the club down by the Dixie Sun Bowl, just off of 400 East and First South in St. George. So we're trying to grow amateur radio. It's an important task, or important thing. Amateur radio has been huge in emergency services, both in our area, other areas. 9/11 amateur radio was pretty much the only way you could talk, because every phone service went down, everything was crazy. Hurricane Katrina, amateur radio operators were some of the first to show up and help. So amateur radio is awesome. I would recommend you guys come and check it out this Friday and Saturday and Sunday. It's a 24-hour event, so you have no excuses, right? I'm just kidding. But yeah, so the Dixie Amateur Radio Club's asking that we get a proclamation for Amateur Radio Week.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Hopefully I didn't talk too long.
No, you done good. You earned every minute you talked.
Well, thank you.
Okay, council, you got the proclamation in your packet. I would look for a motion to authorize the mayor to sign it.
I move that we approve the Amateur Radio Week proclamation as presented.
Second.
Got a motion by Kristen, a second by Jarrett. Any question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Here it is. You want one of them with you right now?
Sure, yes. We said yes. Thank you. We appreciate it.
There you go, Chris. And thank you again. Like I say, typically we try and do that at the front end of the meeting and the mayor wasn't paying attention. So you got to learn tonight.
That's right.
Are you going to all the cities? Sorry to, are you going to the other cities as well?
Do I need to be here?
Yeah, it should be. A
We have-
radio won't pick it up if you're not there.
It's helpful, right? I can talk pretty loud, but I don't know if this will catch it. We've gone to St. George City, Washington County, and Hurricane City. I believe the only one we didn't catch this year is Washington. Oh,
We have
Need
actually
need
gone
your
to,
name.
oh, my name is Rachel Campbell. I am the activities director for the Dixie Amateur Radio Club. And we have approached all communities in Washington County. The ones we heard back from were St. George City, Tokerville, Bergen, Washington County, and Santa Clara. And Washington flat out refused to give us one. So we appreciate you guys recognizing the role that our hobby plays.
We appreciate you do, or everything you do, and knowing that you're there when we need you. So thank you. Good luck this weekend. Okay, council reports, mayor and council reports, man.
Mayor, I don't have any reports. I had a question. I've had a looming question for Dustin all night regarding the Black Desert Plat. So you get into these large lots, no turf. Most of those, I don't think those homes will have it. I think, so it's drip system irrigation and we're running secondary water. We are not.
Now Patrick Manning sounds like he's going to stay under the 0.30 acre feet for water usage, indoor and outdoor combined.
Okay.
So with that being said, I had a long discussion with Mayor about it. We didn't feel it was necessary to run a secondary system.
Okay, sir.
And it's a long dead end. We don't have anything to connect it to on the other end.
Well, and I just got, because I think it was in there and I just got stewing, going, man, that just seems like a lot of cost and maintenance down the road with 2 meters and for just such a minimal use. So I've sat here the whole meeting thinking about that and you guys already resolved it. So
we try.
Is that one of the conditions though?
it was one of the conditions in there and I didn't,
if they come in and want and change what they've told us, then we'd probably make them.
I wanted to ask the question, but I felt like I made the fire department mad, so I just kind of zipped it after that. But I've been just wondering, like, I know we're trying to keep water use way down and sometimes it's like, all right, we're doubling the system, we're doubling meters, and I'm just thinking, what's that cost of the city for such a minimal? So you've thought about that.
Just so you know, our policy has been right now is if there's not enough outdoor use to justify construction of the secondary system, for us to take over the future O&M like you're talking about, we're probably not going to require it unless it's part of a loop line that connects the system together.
Okay. That was my question. That was, well, good work. So I think everything else I'm good on. Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome. Krista?
So I wanted to talk to you about the puzzle. Samantha at Dowdle has reached out to me asking about the puzzle wall, which we've talked about a little bit, an 8 by 10 foot wall. That would be an additional $10,000, which we might have in our wrap tax fund or somewhere. So with that, we would have the band come to our Swiss Days celebration, banjo, violin, singers, dancers from the American Folk Ensemble, and Eric will also speak. And they've sent me an amendment to our agreement if that's something we want to do. So I'm bringing that to you.
I would love to do it. Where are you gonna put it?
In the banquet room, maybe.
In the banquet room, or maybe out here when one of the seat displays are or something?
Oh, and just as another aside, we watched that Tooele City video. That is when they call the people up to put their piece of puzzle in. It has to be that bigger one.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool thing. I think that would be really fun at Swiss Days to have that. I would tell Brock to find the money if you guys approve it.
I think you could auction something off and raise funds for something like that. I mean, it's,
I think. we
yeah,
can too.
I think you're gonna have a lot of support.
The second edition of the puzzles will pay for that easy.
I think so.
You guys okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, that was affirmative.
Perfect. I will get the amendment to you, please.
Anything else?
No, I don't have anything else.
Good. Chris, I can
You can
print
do
it
it.
off. Yeah.
Brock will get you the amendment. Thank you.
We had our meeting with the solid waste district. We're moving forward with plans for a new scale house along with a new administration building. The costs have not been set yet. They're just doing the general plan and the engineering. But looks like they're moving forward. They've made application to the Community Impact Board for grants and loans. Find that.
Okay. Anything else? Jared?
I attended a Utah Infrastructure Agency meeting over Zoom last week, and they were just working on their yearly budgets, and it just showed Utopia and UAA still have really strong subscriber growth. Finances are in really good condition. So I get the impression the days of like, will this ever survive, are long gone, and they're actually making payments to those original cities to basically pay back all the heartache that they went through originally. I don't know the exact details of how that works, but basically it's in a really good position.
Are you signed up?
So it's been a bit of a adventure. So I was signed up, and then I got a call the day of the install, because it's a two-part process. So you sign up on the website, you get a call, and then they come out. For me, they came out and did a site visit just to see like which side of your property you want the conduit to come in, where it'll go into your house, where they can drill a hole, or if there's an existing hole. And then they do two appointments. One's to do all the underground work, and then one to actually run the fiber and get it installed in your house. So I had the first appointment set up, and they forgot to call Blue Stakes. So they couldn't put the conduit in. So that all got rescheduled. And so that happened last week. And then I'm scheduled for the fiber install on Monday. Funny thing is they got really close to my gas line. And so they had to like turn off the gas because they weren't sure if they nicked it or not. So that I had to take out a little more sidewalk than they were anticipating. So anyways, it's a bit of an adventure, but I think it'll be totally fine.
How big was the conduit?
It's like an inch probably. It'll come up and then go into the house. There are several installs that are done in the city right now. And as far as I know, they've gone really well. And then the other thing I want to share is Utopia completed, it's called Rocketeers, the Utopia Fiber Story. It's just a 25-minute long video. You can find it on YouTube. I could also send you guys a link. It's really good. It just kind of explains what Utopia's been through. There's a little bit in there about Santa Clara, and it's just pretty entertaining and interesting. If anyone's asking you like, what really is Utopia? This helps a lot. Okay, I'll send that link out. And that's all I have.
There was no flood control authority meeting this month. We dodged the bullet on the floods. And there was a meeting with the Mayor's Association. We met with the police chiefs and the sheriff from the area, and they talked about motorcycle gangs, outlaw motorcycle gangs that are a problem in Washington County. Chief Flowers was there with me, and he told me some scary stuff. I went home and made sure the door was locked. So we'll probably get some more additional information. I'll have him make a report when I get into one of these meetings, so you can kind of keep you in the dress, but it is a problem down here. And we're going to assign one of our people to serve on a new task force, like the drug task force, to deal with the motorcycle gangs. So kind of be aware of that. The MPO had a meeting with like a placeholder agenda So I just kind of pretended to watch it over Zoom, nothing really important for us. And what else, Brock? The Water District hasn't had any follow-up meetings yet, and we have not heard back from the canal company. Dustin's been trying to get them to meet with us with their new board and haven't been real successful there yet. So if you see any of them, kind of ask them when we're going to meet, start pestering us.
Yeah, who is the new board?
Dennis Fry is still the president. Stan DeMille is on it. Bart Smith is the secretary. The new members are Jim Ents and Bart Smith. Brett Smith, excuse me. And so I felt pretty good about it. Getting Farron Levitt came off and Kent Fry came off and Jim went on and Brett went on, and I think they'll be reasonable to work with going forward. Just now, we just need to get a meeting set. So we'll keep trying to facilitate that. Anything else I forgot?
I have a couple things.
You got a couple things? Okay.
Our semi-annual meeting with Ivans, it's time for that. So we need to try to find a date, either July, August for that. So with that, we'll have UAMPS is August 13th through the 16th, which means we'll need to cancel that second meeting in August, the 16th, we'll need to cancel. So that one's not available. We need to get a date back to them so that, or an option of some dates that they will work for them.
Did we do it at it was a work meeting last time, right? I'm wondering if it would work with them if we kicked it out of this first of the year in the summer and we did it in the fall and spring.
Well, the only reason we try to do the one in January is just prepping for budget, trying to say, okay, here's what we're doing. If there's major changes, we like that January, February.
I just know summer's July's a hard time to get two councils together.
And I think what we did August last year, I think we did August. So we could kick it, I say end of August, even 1st of September probably could be done and then do February. But we just communicated Dale and I about trying to get a time, so.
Do you guys, Mayor and Brock, do you meet with Mayor Hart and Dale?
As necessary.
Okay.
We don't have a standing.
I didn't know if you had lunch or, kind of got together just to talk or just when needed.
Yeah, it's pretty much. I know you meet with Dale probably.
With city managers, I'll try to get together once a month. So.
And I meet with Mayor Hart once a month.
Okay.
But we don't, Ivans and Santa Clara just get together for other meetings unless we have an issue or something.
So maybe I'll send them, if we want to try to keep it on one of our regular meeting nights, or do we want to look at a special meeting, which would mean taking either the first Wednesday, which would conflict with your water district meeting, or if there's a 5th Wednesday.
That's what August.
Is there a 5th Wednesday?
August 30th is the 5th Wednesday.
Shoot to that.
Okay, August 30th.
That work?
I'll send that date out.
I think I'll be in Alaska fishing, but
Good for you.
It's not set yet, but
Good for you.
Dad's making the call, so I think I'm gone the end of August.
See what those guys.
Okay, I'll send that back maybe as an option. So like I said, UAMPS 13th through the 16th, I think Gary got pretty much everybody registered. And I think he did also, you should have got an email, I think your registered spouses, if you can communicate with Gary on if you decide not to go or your spouse is not going to go, just communicate with Gary if you would, please. Also, League of Cities and Towns seems earlier this year. It's September 6th through the 8th. Is what I saw.
Here?
No,
Salt
in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So take a look at your schedules. If you let me know on your attendance on that and get you registered.
I'll go. Sure.
No for you, Danny. Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw the date that.
Certainly. I'll check.
It's not on their website. I actually found it through
Salt Lake, some events that are happening in Salt Lake site, so. That's all I had there.
Okay, anything, Matt? Anybody's pants on fire? Ty wore a tie. I'm glad you did too. You looked really good when you came up there. Okay, if there's nothing else. No executive session. Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Danny, second by Ben. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or, yeah, no opposed. We're done. Thank you, everybody.
Mayor, I got 4 days and with Whistler.
Clean up.
We're in last. I actually don't know yet. It's a guy out of Hurricane. My dad was. It's, I'll look up his name. I called him, he's just got a place there. They run you, depending on the weather, they run you out in the bay. He said it might be a little late in the year to go